The thing you're chasing isn't wrong. Not love, not success, not peace, not even that dream version of yourself you hope to become, but your need for it. That's the trap. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." And in this case, what you chase desperately keeps slipping away, because your identity becomes tied to the wanting itself. Let's break this down. Most people live in a loop. They believe their lives will begin when they finally achieve that one thing, when they finally earn enough, find the right partner, fix their minds. But what they don't realize is that this endless striving isn't creating progress. It's deepening the sense of lack. And Jung saw this as more than a motivational flaw. It was a symptom of psychological fragmentation. He believed that obsession, whether it's for love, attention, peace, money, is not just desire. It's a disconnection from the deeper self. The conscious mind may say, "I want love because I'm tired of being alone." But the unconscious whispers something else, something more painful, something like, "I never felt worthy of love to begin with." Think about that for a second. You don't just want success. You want proof that your life matters. You don't just want peace. You want relief from the war you've been fighting in your own head since childhood. You don't just want connection. You want the feeling of finally being seen without needing to perform. And that's where the trap begins. Because instead of healing that unconscious wound, you try to fill it with achievement, with people, with applause, with validation. But no matter what you gain, the hunger doesn't end. It grows. You keep climbing mountains, only to feel empty when you reach the top. Because the unconscious belief hasn't changed. And as long as that wound drives the chase, no destination will feel like arrival. That's why Jung didn't tell you to stop dreaming. He warned you about chasing from fear. When desire turns into need, when ambition becomes a form of self-escape, your nervous system never rests. You live in a constant state of not enough. Not yet. Not there. Not lovable. Not whole. And here's the paradox. The harder you grip, the faster it slips. The more you crave love to avoid loneliness, the more you push people away. The more you crave success to outrun shame, the more empty it feels when you get there. The more you crave calm to escape anxiety, the more restless you become in silence. So what's really happening? You've attached your identity to the gap. You've made the absence of something define who you are. And this creates a dangerous loop. I'm not okay until I get X. I'm not worthy unless I achieve Y. That's not ambition. That's emotional survival disguised as self-development. And survival doesn't attract what you want. It repels it. Because underneath your vision board, your daily affirmations, your hustle, there's a frequency of fear, of urgency, of, if I don't get this, I'll break. And that frequency shapes everything. It makes relationships feel like auditions. It makes goals feel like deadlines. It turns rest into guilt and silence into self-judgment. Sound familiar? This is why people collapse after getting what they wanted. The success doesn't satisfy. The relationship doesn't heal. The peace doesn't land. Because it was never about the thing. It was about what you believed that thing would fix. So, what now? Kill the desire? Absolutely not. Desire is human. Passion is sacred. You should want things. But chasing from fear and emptiness only deepens the pain. The solution isn't to stop dreaming. It's to stop identifying with the chase. Because the moment you stop needing it, you unlock something powerful. Alignment. You become the version of you that no longer you walk differently. You speak differently. You create differently. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped proving. And when you stop proving, you start attracting. This is what Jung meant when he said transformation doesn't begin with answers. It begins with awareness. Awareness of what's really driving you. Awareness of how your unconscious beliefs shape your emotional reality. So before you take another step forward, pause. Ask yourself, what's the real reason I want this? What feeling am I trying to replace? What belief am I trying to escape? Because the moment you stop running from yourself is the moment everything starts running towards you. By now, you may be wondering, if chasing only pushes it further away and giving up isn't the answer either, then what is? Jung would tell you, you must shift from seeking to seeing. Most people spend their entire lives in pursuit mode. They're constantly scanning for the next fix, next opportunity, next partner, next breakthrough. But this posture, always reaching outward, blinds them to what already exists within. The modern mind has been conditioned to believe that satisfaction comes from getting something new. But Jung taught the opposite, that wholeness is the process of recovering something lost. Not acquiring more, but integrating what's already yours, but hidden. This is what he called the process of individuation. Individuation is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming yourself, fully. And that self includes the parts you've abandoned, the emotions you've buried, the fears you've silenced. When you chase without awareness, you run in circles around your own shadow. You try to outrun shame by achieving. You try to outrun rejection by pleasing. You try to outrun emptiness by consuming. But no matter how far you run, your shadow keeps pace. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So many people are stuck in patterns, not because they're weak, but because they've never turned around and looked at what's driving them. They haven't asked, what am I avoiding by staying busy, by needing attention, by always being productive? This is hard. It requires radical honesty. The kind of honesty that makes you pause mid-chase and admit, I don't just want love. I'm terrified of being alone with myself. That's where transformation begins. Not in striving, but in sitting with that fear, in watching it, in listening to it, in understanding that it's not your enemy, it's your teacher. Because when you no longer need the outside world to fix the inside wound, you become powerful. Not because you have everything, but because you've reclaimed yourself. You've stopped outsourcing your peace. You've stopped waiting for life to approve of you. You've stopped begging for permission to feel whole. And that shift, internal, invisible, profound, is what Jung called the return to the self. Now let's talk about the paradox of effort. This doesn't mean you stop taking action. This isn't about laziness or passivity. It's about the intention behind the action. Are you acting from lack or from presence? Are you chasing because you believe something is missing? Or are you creating because it's an honest expression of your fullness? Jung was not against goals. He was against delusion. He knew that when your actions come from insecurity, you might build success, but it will feel like a cage. You'll get the applause, but feel like an imposter. You'll get the partner, but feel unseen. You'll get the peace, but be unable to sit still. Why? Because it wasn't built from integration. It was built from avoidance. Avoidance is a clever trap. It dresses itself in ambition, in productivity, even in kindness. But beneath it, you're still running, still proving, still gripping. And the universe responds not to your surface intentions, but to your state of being. You may say, I want love. But if your energy says, I'm incomplete without it, the universe hears need, not readiness. You may say, I want success. But if your vibration screams desperation, you'll attract chaos, not clarity. Here's a brutal truth. The world doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you are. This is why Jung's work was so transformative, because he showed us how to become what we long for, not by pretending, not by manifesting, but by integrating, by going inward, by facing the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. You cannot receive from life what you are not yet embodying. You want respect? Respect your own truth. You want peace? Stop abandoning yourself in the name of perfection. You want love? Love the parts of you you've been told are unlovable. Because when you finally stop needing and start being, you become magnetic. Not in the flashy, performative way, but in the quiet, grounded, unshakable way. You no longer chase, you choose. You no longer beg, you invite. You no longer need approval, you embody value. This is not easy. This is not quick. This is the deep work. The work most people avoid because it doesn't come with applause or attention. But it's the only work that creates real freedom. So stop asking, how do I get it? And start asking, how can I become the version of me that no longer needs it to feel complete? That shift, that tiny internal pivot, is the beginning of everything. Let's talk about something even more uncomfortable. Projection. You see, when you're constantly wanting something from the outside, it's not just a sign of craving. It's often a sign of disconnection. You're no longer in contact with your own truth. You've outsourced it, handed it over to someone else or something else, hoping they'll return it with interest. Carl Jung warned us. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. In other words, what you chase and what you hate, both come from you. When you crave external validation, you're not just hungry for approval. You're trying to avoid seeing the parts of yourself you secretly doubt. When you obsess over someone else's love, status, or attention, it's because somewhere inside, your own self-worth feels fragile. You're looking into a distorted mirror, hoping it'll reflect something solid. This is projection in action. You blame others for your emptiness. You resent others for your own neglect. You fall in love not with people, but with the fantasies you've painted onto them. You become addicted not to reality, but to the idea of what could be, if only they changed, if only you got the thing, if only life cooperated. But here's the cost. Every time you project, you abandon yourself. You give away your center. You hand over the key to your emotional well-being and wait for someone else to unlock you. And then you wonder why it hurts. Jung said, We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. That person who disappointed you, that situation that triggered you, that unfulfilled longing. It's not here to break you. It's here to show you where you've been blind, where you've given too much, where your needs have gone unspoken for too long, where the wounds you thought were healed are still open. But most people run from these mirrors. They distract themselves with busyness. They call it hustle. They call it grind. They call it self-improvement. But deep down, it's avoidance. Because self-confrontation is hard. It requires sitting in the silence and asking questions like, why do I feel this urgency to prove myself? What am I so afraid to feel? That I need constant stimulation? Whose love am I still trying to earn, long after they're gone? These aren't surface-level questions. They're doorways to the unconscious. Jung believed that the soul doesn't evolve through external progress. It evolves through inner integration. That means facing not just your ambition, but your grief. Not just your goals, but your guilt. Not just your vision, but your shadow. And the truth is, many of us are scared of our own shadow. We're afraid to admit how much we've compromised ourselves. We're afraid to see the envy, the resentment, the pettiness, the insecurity. So we keep performing on social media, in relationships, at work, wearing masks we forgot how to take off. But Jung reminds us, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. That's where real power begins, not in being perfect, but in being honest. So if you're still chasing something, whether it's success, love, peace, or healing, ask yourself, what part of me have I rejected that I think this thing will fix? Because when you start reclaiming those parts, something radical happens. You stop seeing life as a series of problems to solve. You stop needing others to complete your story. You begin to experience something deeper, wholeness. And wholeness is not about getting what you want. It's about no longer being split in two, no longer living as a half self waiting to be validated. It's a return to what you forgot in the noise, a return to what you abandoned when you chose fear over truth, a return to what was always inside you, before the trauma, before the comparison, before the expectations. This return doesn't scream, it doesn't post, it doesn't need to be seen, it simply is. And from that place, peace becomes possible. Love becomes mutual, work becomes meaningful, silence becomes healing, and effort becomes grace. Because now, you're no longer chasing to fill a void. You're creating from fullness. You're acting from alignment. You're living, not to prove, but to express. This is the sacred reversal Jung spoke of. When you stop needing, you start receiving. When you stop performing, you start resonating. When you stop striving, you start becoming. And in that state, everything that once eluded you quietly arrives. So, what does it mean to stop wanting? Does it mean giving up? Becoming passive? Ceasing to care? No, not at all. To stop wanting in the Jungian sense is to stop grasping. It's to loosen the grip of the ego, the part of us that's always chasing, calculating, craving a guarantee. It's to shift from a life of control to a life of alignment. Jung believed that transformation does not come from force. It comes from allowing, from creating space, from trusting that the unconscious has its own intelligence. And that sometimes our deepest breakthroughs arrive not through pressure, but through surrender. Think of the times in your life when something finally clicked. A problem you'd obsessed over, but only solved after stepping away. A relationship you tried to force, but found peace in only after letting go. An answer that came not while you were searching, but when you were still. This isn't coincidence. It's the nature of psychic reality. Jung called it enantiodromia, the tendency of things to turn into their opposite when pushed to the extreme. When you chase too hard, the thing runs from you. But when you release, you create the space for it to come. This is not magic. It's not blind optimism. It's psychological wisdom. Let's take desire itself. Most people assume the more they want something, the faster it will come. But Jung would ask, why do you want it so badly? Is it coming from your soul or from your shadow? Are you seeking growth or escaping fear? This is where real inner work begins. Because once you start examining your desires, you'll realize many of them aren't even yours. They were inherited, imprinted, marketed. You chase success because you think it'll prove your worth. You chase love because you think it'll erase your loneliness. You chase peace because you've never learned how to sit with chaos. But what if you stopped? Not stopped living. Stopped grasping. What if you showed up, did your part, then let the outcome unfold, without needing it to look a certain way? That's not failure. That's mastery. The Stoics had a word for it. Apatheia. Not apathy in the modern sense, but serenity. The calm of a mind no longer whipped around by desire and fear. The strength to act with clarity, then release the outcome with grace. Jung saw this too. He spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. And a key part of that process is learning to live in partnership with the unconscious. To recognize that you are not just your ego. You are not just your plans. You are a vast inner landscape, dreams, instincts, symbols, fears, all conspiring to guide you towards something larger than logic. Yourself. The self, in Jungian terms, is not the ego. It's the totality of who you are. The silent intelligence behind your life patterns. The inner guide that sends you signs through synchronicity, dreams, intuition, when the ego finally quiets down. And that's why surrender is so powerful. Because when you stop demanding that life go your way, you open yourself to the deeper rhythm already unfolding. You stop pushing and start participating. You stop resisting and start receiving. But this surrender isn't lazy. It's not passive. It's active trust. You still take the steps. You still do the work. You still show up with full presence. But you no longer attach your worth to the result. That's the difference. You move with purpose, not panic. You act from truth, not tension. You release what doesn't respond and protect what truly nourishes your soul. And here's the paradox. The moment you no longer need it, it often comes. Because now, you are aligned. No longer chasing love to fill a void, but radiating it from fullness. No longer hustling for success to prove you matter, but creating from a place of inner clarity. No longer demanding certainty, but trusting the mystery that life always was. This is the final doorway. And it's not a technique. It's a state of being. One that whispers, I am enough. Even without the relationship. Even without the title. Even without the applause. Because the real prize is not the thing. It's who you become when you stop needing the thing to feel complete. It's peace. It's freedom. It's the quiet knowing that your path is not a performance. It's a process. And your only real task? To walk it with integrity. To listen when your soul speaks. To stay rooted when storms come. To act, not from compulsion, but from consciousness. Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But when you do make it conscious, when you stop chasing and start integrating, when you honor your shadow instead of hiding from it, you no longer beg life for answers. You become the answer. And from that place, you don't get what you want by chasing it. You get it the moment you no longer need it to define you. That is Jung's gift. That is your freedom. And that is where your real life begins.